Mesopotamia. I've just zapped you back about 5,000 years. Astrology evolved, the astrology we know evolved in the Mesopotamian region. I think generally most people will accept that. And they didn't have an ecliptic. They knew it was there, but they were not married to it. They were not obsessed by it. They were not suffering from what I call ecliptocentric-itis, right? Which we suffer from since the Greeks. They were seeing the whole sky. They divided the sky into 3 pathways. Enlil, the area of the sky, about 16 degrees, what we would call 16 degrees north of the ecliptic, northern part. Anul, the area of the ecliptic, and Ea, the area south of the ecliptic. And indeed, here's what is known as a Mesopotamian astrolabe, different from what we would now know as an astrolabe, but these are called astrolabes, from about 1100 BC. And they're very, very simple instruments, and very elegant, and would still work quite well. This represents every month of the year. And you would simply take your astrolabe out, and this represents the horizon line. And for certain months of the year, this star will be rising in Ea. This star here will be rising in Anul. And this star here will be rising in Enlil. And if there was a cloud here and you couldn't see Ea, you could spot Enlil, or vice versa. Not only that, if you couldn't see the horizon line at all, you could actually look for the stars that would be directly culminating above you, the Zippu stars. And it's this thinking which gave us the MC, the importance of the MC. Because if you can't see the horizon line, quite often you can see the stuff directly above your head. And so they couldn't see that. They'd watch for these stars culminating. And if they couldn't see that, they could watch for these stars setting. But that way they could tell the date. They could make sure that the calendar was ticking along. Because they didn't believe the calendar would just keep ticking along all by itself. They had to make sure that they did the right rituals and the right attitude to ensure that this kept happening. One of the huge differences in mindset between us and them is that we assume order. They did not. And if you want to get into that, that's tomorrow's lecture on chaos. The word mal simply means star. So you're seeing this is the star with that name, the star with this name, and so on for this month. But that's what we're looking at. But if ever we had evidence that they're using the whole sky, here it is in their astrolabe. And they developed their astrology, which is our astrology, which is the genesis of our astrology. They developed it based on this thinking. And there is quite a lot of their astrological work we have being translated. There's a lot still to be translated. It's all in cuneiform, but there's quite a lot that has been translated. And there's several major translators, but one of the major ones is Hermann Hunger. And I've taken a few excerpts from him, which is directly from the Mesopotamian astrology. So here's where there are brackets, that's where they have figured out that the clay got broken away and they've figured it out. And if there's lots of dots, then they just can't figure it out, right? But that's the way it's written. Okay, here's a direct prophecy, a piece of Mesopotamian astrology. This is Perseus, who was called the Old Man in their astrology. If the Old Man's star, which is, we don't know which one it is, it could be Argol, it could be this one here, Murphak. If the Old Man's star comes close to the moon, comes close to the top of the moon and stands there and enters the moon. See, this is a different language, isn't it? We don't talk like this in astrology now, but they're doing something different. If the Old Man's star comes to the top of the moon, the star is coming to the moon, not the moon to it, because if you watch the night sky, that's how it appears. The stars come to the moon and penetrate the moon. That's what they actually look like. So if the Old Man's star comes to the top of the moon, he's going to come to the top of the moon because the moon's not going to get right into the stars of Perseus. And if he stands there, in other words, the moon is travelling slowly. If the moon is travelling slowly on that day, so it appears that Perseus stands on top of the moon. The king will be pleasing to his land. There will be truth and justice in his land. This is a prediction about this. And immediately we see that there's stories going on here. The moon is always empowering to whatever. In their thinking, the moon, who is a male entity by the name of Sin, S-I-N, is empowering to whatever it touches. And Perseus is one of the constellations which represents stability and kingship. So if the moon is underneath the king's feet and he stands on top of it, the moon is empowering the king. So the king is good, the king is just, the king is right. All is well, all is safe. Here's another one. Mars, who they also call the wolf star. Mars, which stands inside Scorpius, there he is about to move out until the 25th of Tammuz. I think that's the way you pronounce it. It will move out of Scorpius and its radiance has fallen. Hey, what's this? Its radiance has fallen. The brightness of Mars is relevant. So this priest is talking to the king saying, Mars is there, it's going to move out, and its brightness is falling. So this is good. The war god is reducing. Let the king, my lord, be happy. The king should be very glad. But until Mars goes out, let the king, I just can't sit there, take guard. It's just the projector's set a little bit too low. So, and it says take guard or be cautious. So what we've got here is that there's a sky story going on. They've got a great scorpion in the sky. And when Mars, who is the war god called Nergal, when he's really bright, Nergal is strong. It's really simple thinking, right? If a strong Nergal is hanging around this constellation, hey, we're in trouble. If he is leaving that, things will get better. And he's not only leaving that, but he's reducing in his brightness. So the energy of the war god, Nergal, is reducing. So the enemies may be weakened on the border, or will be well. But the king still has to take care. Now, is this relevant? Who cares? Isn't our astrology fantastic? Why should we bother? Well, I think we need to bother because if we start to play with this stuff now and see if it's relevant or not, it's going to take the pressure off the ecliptic for a start. And it is relevant. That's what's so powerful. It's still very, very potent. Here's an example. Oh, sorry, I've sort of jumped myself in the slide. Before we get to the example, what we're actually doing here, what they are doing, I should say, is that they have characters. And they are a playwright. The astrologer is a playwright, a storyteller. And they have a stage, which is the sky. And they have these characters that move around the stage, various parts of the stage. And they're never too sure where the characters are going to move and if the characters are going to be shined on with a spotlight or not. But as the characters move around this stage and they get shined on in some way or illuminated in some way, then they're stepping forward and doing their lines. They're saying their role. And the astrologer is observing the play, sitting in the audience, observing the play and reading it, reading the story. So they're reading the sky stories. That's what's going on. And for them, and this is a very brief synopsis of the different meanings the characters have or who the characters are that can enter the stage. Saturn and also Libra and the scales represent the king, all that is well. Jupiter, in this sky story, in this drama, is Marduk, represents the crown prince or a general. And the general can be happy and tame, or the prince can be in good relationship with the king, or the prince can be raging and attacking the king, depending on what's going on in the sky. So the crown prince is not always fantastic, but the crown prince is anybody who has power, but they are not the king. They are one off from that great power. Mars is Nergal. There are different names, but these are the Sumerian names. He is the god of war, enemies, invasion, or strife. So you always want to keep Mars tame and happy and dim. All right. Venus, morning or evening rising star, is Ishtar, and she is a young goddess. Also, she radiates. She can give power. If she is a morning or evening star near other planets, then she is actually radiating onto that. They use that term. Something is radiated and enforced and empowering. Mercury is also a morning or evening star, depending on its rising. Is always a young person, quite often considered the thief in Mesopotamian writing because you only see it fleetingly. And so it nips in and dips out again. So it is sleight of hand, the thief or the rumour. If the thief stands too close to the king, then the king is being given bad advice. You get all these letters from astrologers. Don't believe that astrologer. They are giving you bad advice, right? But he's very brief. The moon, who is the male god of sin, can give or take power to the king. It was just so important in their astrology that the new month always started with the new moon. So the full moon was always around the 14th or 15th day of the month. And there's probably 50% of the letters written of the astrologer to the king is, all is well, my liege, my lord, the moon is full on the 15th day. And you think, well, of course it's going to be full on the 15th day. But it means the cosmos is still working. The heavens are still working. All is okay. And you are being radiated upon. Do you know, like, it's okay. The moon god is shining upon you. We've got through another month, you know, without the sky falling apart and the world becoming undone. And the sun is also the concept of kingship. Okay, so can we take this out of its ancient, dusty, cuneiform box? And can we let it play in the 20th century? Can we let it run around the park and have fun? I think we can. This is last July. Here is the horoscope, because we're used to looking at the sky horoscopically. And here we have Mars rising, and I've only got the visual planets on this. What I want you to notice is that Mars is all by itself in the sky. The king is hidden by the sun. The king is with the sun, so it's hidden from the sky. The king has left. The crown prince has left as well. Ishtar and Mercury have also left. Nergal, who happens to be very bright at the moment, all by himself, unsupervised, in the sky. This is a football hooligan. Here's the picture in the sky. This is a few days later. The moon's thin as there, but the moon is not strong enough to stop the football hooligan. So here's the Saturn below. So the Saturn's not visible in the sky because Saturn's going to rise after the sun, and it will set very soon after the sun, and we're not going to see Saturn. We're not going to see all these protective forces, and we just simply have Mars all by itself. And Mars is actually riding on the back of Cetus the whale. Cetus the whale is not a nice, comfy humpback whale that you're used to. Cetus the whale has dog's legs. Cetus the whale is the Loch Ness monster, but I don't mean that even in a nice way. He's the whale that eats Jonas. Cetus the whale represents the beast from the collective unconscious, the beast from the great ocean depths that none of us can see, none of us understand, and can suddenly just swoop up and change everything. This was what the whale represented to humanity, you know, for many, many thousands of years. It's only in the last 50 years that we've started to think nice thoughts about whales, thankfully, right? But I think that's important not to confuse these. This is not, it is called Cetus the whale, but it is not a whale as we know it in our 21st century culture of whales. It is a sea monster. It is the collective unconscious. Now, we've got Mars riding the back of Cetus the whale. This is a guy on a Harley Davidson running amok. You know? This is trouble. And we all know what happened. As soon as Nergal got the sky to himself, almost within days, we got the London bombings. And it was interesting because I was researching this at the time, and the only time we've had Nergal in this sort of situation since, or before that, was the year 1800. And the year 1800, through Europe, Napoleon was raging. Now, we don't have a Napoleon who can rage through Europe at the moment. But the thing that we have is the enemy. I mean, Napoleon was well established as the bad guy at that stage, if you were on the English side of the channel. So the only thing that we have at this moment, of course, is the concept of terrorism. And indeed, as soon as Nergal got the sky to himself, as soon as the king left, we have the London bombings. And the king didn't return until late August. In other words, Saturn started to be able to be seen again. After sunset, we had Saturn in the sky. The king returns to the sky. We have authority back in control, for better or for worse. Another example. This was earlier. These are taken from the Visual Astrology newsletter, so some of you may see these, and I'll have to tell you what the bottom is saying. This was back in February. This was a fascinating sky story. And look at this now as a Mesopotamian would look at it. The moon The moon currently is getting a great deal of celestial latitude. And so it's moving to its great standstill, which actually happens next year. What that visually means is that when the moon is around the stars of Cancer, it gets incredibly high in the sky. And when it's in the stars of Capricorn, it's incredibly low in the sky. So it's doing this extreme thing at the moment. And it just so happened that Saturn, the king, has been, or was at that stage, going retrograde amongst the stars of Gemini. Now, it's okay for the king to go retrograde. He's hanging about, right? The king is musing on a point. He's in the stars of Gemini. So there's more than one king. So there's a meeting of kings. There's some kings hanging out together. Sin, the moon god, joins them, but passes over the top of them, a very, very rare phenomena. That has meaning. So therefore, since the moon is shifting power through the story, through the stage, we think the kings are gathering together, but something is overshadowing them. Something is more important than they are. Something's going on. And then we see the crown prince, very bright, I might add, at the moment. The crown prince, very bright, amongst these beautiful domesticating stars of Virgo. Virgo is a constellation that calms everything down. Even Mars amongst the stars of Virgo will make it calmer. Do you know, like, it's all right, you just be good, right? And particularly the closer they get to Spica, the calmer things get. So this is a very happy crown prince. This is not a crown prince trying to overthrow the kings. This is a very happy crown prince. The kings are high in the sky. They've got all the power, but they're giving the power to the crown prince. So God, what's going on here? There's a gathering of kings giving power to something which already has a lot of power, but it's going to get raised even further. And what happened in this period were these two events. The Pope died, so we had a gathering of kings, the gathering of cardinals, who quickly handed the crown, so fast you could hardly see it move, to the heir apparent. The favourite got the crown, didn't he? There was no surprise. Everybody knew he was going to get it, and within days he got it. So the handover was so fast. It was obvious the favourite would get it because the crown prince was so happy in the chart, and the kings were enjoying that crown prince. And just to sort of get in on the act, so to speak, then we have a royal wedding, which in another way was another gathering of kings. And another crown, unofficially, is handed to someone else. And Charles, literally the crown prince, was allowed to take centre stage of English politics and the news and so on. Do you know, like, he glowed and he handed a crown to Camilla. So we get these beautiful, simple transitions that all go very smoothly. There's no conflict. When I see this, I'm in awe of the potency of how this ancient thinking about the sky is still functioning, whether we see it or not. And as astrologers, we haven't even been looking at it for several thousand years. And the point I'm making is I'm not overriding the horoscope. I'm simply saying, hey guys, there's something else going on here which we can start playing with, because no one else is going to play with it. It's us. It's up to us. Another example. The last time we had a gathering of kings, apart from just earlier this year, was actually the summer of 1914. It was a bit different. Here's the horoscope for it. So we've got, this is the ingress into Cancer, Sun-Pluto conjunction, always a bit of a worry. Here's the Saturn playing around in Gemini, gathering of kings. Mars is strong in the chart. What's going on here? Or we know what happened there. That's the beginning of World War I. But clearly there's a huge difference between these two sky stories, because one is a peaceful handing over of power to a crown prince or a cardinal, and the other one is extremely different. Let's just look at the sky story. Here's the sky for this chart. Have a look at Pluto. This is the constellation Orion. There's the constellation Orion. Pluto is right there in the club. Now, it would have been there for quite a few years. Let's get it quite clear. But all I'm simply saying is when Pluto moved on to the club of Orion, the great warrior, we had World War I. I'm not saying that every time Pluto moves there that's going to happen, but I find that interesting. And I know we can't even see Pluto. So I've just done, I've taken a leap from visual astrology into a mixture of horoscopic and the sky. Okay. We also have Taurus the bull. And look what's on the tip of its horns. Saturn and the moon. The moon, of course, will be flipping through here. The Saturn is right on the tip of the horn of the bull. A little bit aggressive. Saturn is the king. Is the king a peacemaker in this sky story? No. Just read the story. That's all I'm doing. The king enters the stage, and he has the power to be a peacemaker, but he's not. He's on the tip of the horn of the bull, charging. He's overreacting. He's a little bit aggressive. He's also moving into Gemini, so we've got this whole gathering of kings going to start to happen. And there's a certain aggression here. And we've got this other thing, which of course we won't find any clay tablets about Pluto sitting in the club of Orion. Mars, right there, actually eclipsing Regulus, the heart of the lion. And this lion, we've tamed the lion a little bit. We've cut off its tail. But this lion was huge in their astrology. Here's the lion they had. Huge. And the heart of the lion was the place of most power. If the king went there, if Saturn went there, he is a powerful conquering king. But this is Nergal. Gathering of kings, aggressive attitude, Nergal taking centre stage. War. The delineation of this by the Mesopotamians, the Mars here on the heart. Mars is also called the wolf star. If the wolf star reaches the lion star, this is the lion star, far off days, broken cuneiform text, missed that bit, for the land. But it all comes under this wolf star in Leo. If a star flares up, that's the wolf star again, and enters, they know that they're talking about Leo, there will be revolt. So here's the delineation. If the wolf star, if Nergal eclipses or gets into the lion star and flares up bright, there will be revolt. We have that. How will the revolt happen? We also see the king is aggressive. And there's a lot of them, and then we have this modern statement of Pluto in the club. It's a very powerful sky story, isn't it? It's a play that's playing out, and it's there. And we're all free to put our own delineation on that. I'm just sharing you my thinking, but I think the delineation is pretty straightforward. There's basic elements on the stage. And what we had, of course, was Mars was eclipsing Regulus, the heart of the lion. So rage overcomes the kings of Europe and fills their minds with the thoughts of war, which is so we got this First World War. Now, André Barbeau talked in the Charles Carter Memorial Lecture via the wonderful voice of Lynn, right? Talked of this time in the future, 2080. And I got curious because I wanted to look at it, because he talked that could be the time of another war. I thought, well, let's simply look at the sky. Let's do a little bit of mundane work, and let's see if we can make a prediction. Let's just see what's going on. Let's see if the sky is as worrying as he indicated. This is the chart. I actually ran it through and saw that it's actually 2079. There's a triple overlapping here of Saturn-Uranus conjunction opposing the Neptune, and it sort of runs all through 2079. So if we look here, this is the sky for that chart. Now, the Saturn-Uranus conjunction is so tight, the two planets are simply overlapping each other. These are all from starlight, all these images from starlight, and they're simply overlapping each other. No matter how much I zoom in there, they're totally on top of each other. So it is a real conjunction. It's a bodily conjunction. It's physical lining up. And I wasn't too concerned with that because they're in the stars of Capricorn. And the stars of Capricorn are the great god Ea, the great civilizing force that brings civilization to the planet. And when planets get amongst these stars, it's like Virgo, but there's a sense of law and order. You know, it's domesticating. I think, no, that's okay. That's all right. This holds well. This could be all right. But I got very concerned by Jupiter. And I'll just go back to the chart again. I want you to notice that Jupiter is rising before the Saturn. This is the Crown Prince rising before the Saturn. In this particular chart, the moon is with it, but we know the moon, I've just picked this particular date, so I'm not going to take a lot of notice of the moon. But that Jupiter is interesting. And I quickly noticed that the Jupiter is here amongst the stars of Sagittarius, and that might not run an alarm bell for you, but let me alarm you. This is Sagittarius. I've put him down there so we can see both things together. Jupiter is there, so Jupiter is right there. And that is the nebula of Perseus in Sagittarius. Now, you know, I say Sagittarius and you see the Archer and you think all lovely fluffy thoughts about inspiring people and everything else. Wrong! Right. We're not talking about the zodiac sign. We're not talking about the zodiacal mythology of Sagittarius. We're talking about the constellation Sagittarius. Zeus was so afraid of Sagittarius that he would not go and ask it to step to one side to let Chiron, the other centaur, be with him in the sky. He was terrified of Sagittarius, totally intimidated by Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the great warrior. Sagittarius is the total state of the art warrior. We get the imagery of Sagittarius, the centaur, from the mounted warrior, the man on horseback who can shoot a bow and arrow. And it comes from the Assyrians. And when the Assyrians rode down through into Egypt and Mesopotamia, it scared the heebie-jeebies out of everybody. And they couldn't believe it. And they actually assumed that the man and the horse were one. They'd never seen anything like it. The archer was bad enough. But to mount the archer accurately and to let him be accurate was a terrifying weapon of war. This was the ultimate weapon of war. Sagittarius for us now represents a totally, fully equipped US combat soldier hunting you with all his technology. That's what Sagittarius represents.
The technology that you're referring to is considerably more advanced than even the state-of-the-art.
Yes. In other words, this is the ultimate weapon of war. Jupiter, very bright in the sky, at the time of this rather interesting conjunction, which is very difficult in its own right, Jupiter, the crown prince, is here. Who's going to start causing the problem? Not the kings, a general or a crown prince. This is telling us a very precise story. We're actually getting a story that, yes, this is a very aggressive time, but it's going to be started by someone who doesn't have the power. It's a revolt. It's a popular leader or a leader who emerges out of a system and starts a revolt with an aggressive act. It could be another assassination that starts the whole thing off. But this is not a president or a prime minister declaring war on something. That's not the beginning of it. This is an unelected individual or group takes power with an aggressive act. This is someone dropping an atom bomb, not necessarily an atom bomb, but someone doing something like that, and it's not under the label of any particular government. And it causes the unrest that Andre was talking about. Something else to notice here, Pluto. In the tail of Cetus, the whale. The tail is the driving engine of this creature, isn't it? The tail is the engine room of the whale. This is the beast of the collective unconscious. Pluto is in the engine room. Who's underneath this crown prince? Who's underneath this popular revolt? This is a huge uprising from the collective unconscious that erupts, focusing itself through this individual here, and explodes upon the planet in some form of revolution, which shatters the world power system and puts us into some other model. It could be very violent or not, I don't know. But this individual then is not one lone idiot firing off a bomb. Well, it could be, couldn't it? But it's not. It's actually a huge thing that's brewing in the collective unconscious. People are going to know about it for many years beforehand. It's going to be a festering sore which is being suppressed. It's going to be like the French Revolution, and it suddenly just explodes with the Bastille going. It erupts out of the collective unconscious. That's what I'm trying to show you in this story. I think it's really fascinating. So there's one other thing we can add with this story, is it just so happens that as the very tight Uranus-Saturn conjunction is happening, which is opposing the Neptune, which you can't see in this map, there's also a Venus-Mars occultation, an exact conjunction bodily as well. They overlap each other in the sky. Let's look at that, because that becomes interesting. Any actor on the stage of this great drama we must focus on, because they're going to add to the story. So here's a sunset chart for this is all around late February, 2079. So here's sunset. We're not going to see the Mercury, it's too close to the sun. We're not going to visually see the Pluto, obviously, and we're not going to visually see the Neptune. So all we're going to see in that night sky at the time of this eruption is the Venus and Mars. That's all we're going to see. It's very important what we see. There is no king present. There is no domesticating force here. Just the Venus and Mars. Here's a little slice of the sky zooming in. Here it is, the sun below the horizon. Venus and Mars, so close together we can't separate them. The whale stands on its tail on the horizon. Standing there, this great whale. And Venus and Mars. And what we've got is Venus is a long way away from the sun. So Venus is a very bright evening star. The further that Venus is away from the sun, the brighter she is. So her radiance is extremely strong, and she's going to move the faster. She's going to move and embrace Mars. She's going to have sex with Mars. She's literally coming together with Mars. And she radiates anything she touches. She empowers anything she touches. And who is she giving all the power to at this so delicate time? Mars, Nergal. I think Andre Barbeau is totally correct. I think this is a very worrying time, 2079. And I gain all of that, not just from the chart, which any astrologer will look at. Like, this opposition is at the bend, square the nodal axis, which just makes it over the top. Very difficult indeed. But we take that and we link it to the sky story, and be afraid, be very afraid. It's a very difficult time. And people know I'm an optimist. Right? All right. Okay.
But it must be two scenarios that can work themselves.
Look, work it out. Share it with us. Great. You know, I can only see one scenario at the moment. I agree with you, but at the moment I only see one story, and it scares me. But I'm happy. You know, all I can do is show you the characters on the stage, and then what we do is we try and work out what the story is saying. And I definitely, I'm not putting myself up as an authority. It's just that I've got the eye for it, but I'm happy to anybody else to add their delineation, and that's fine. Yes?
How often does Venus cover Mars? Like every...
I actually couldn't answer that question, like in terms of an occultation of it. I couldn't answer that question. It is a question that should be able to easily answered, but I actually just can't do that at the moment. I mean, literally at 1 o'clock in the morning I was working on these slides for you because I was just fascinated with it. So, we've been doing mundane astrology because that's what the Mesopotamians did. We've been doing mundane astrology. All you who hate mundane astrology, you've just been doing some, right? So breathe. It's okay. We're going to get back to natal stuff now, all right? Can we do this for natal charts? Is the sky story that's happening at the time of someone's born, is it relevant to their life? And I think it is. This ends the second part of this lecture. So when you're ready, click on